So this is going to be how to replace the power switch, charge port, and de-yellow the plastic buttons. So the issue this one's system has is it'll turn on, but you don't get any power light or charge light. It will charge, indicated by the top right, but you don't get any charge light, so most likely the thing that's busted is the piece right here is busted off. So we got to open it up and replace those parts, as well as the slider's a bit sticky, so probably just clean that off, as well as a little bit of dust under there, but not too bad. Then for de-yellowing the plastics, I typically use this Retro Bright. That seems to work pretty well, that you can buy on eBay or Amazon. So to disassemble it, you're gonna have 4 black screws on the back, here, 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 and here. Then if you have to get down to the power switch or the charge port level, you gotta remove these 2 screws here, this one and right around here. And for both situations, you also have to remove the screw on the side trim. And I would guess that this repair probably takes about 10 minutes to do. And the trickiest aspect of it that you'd want to watch out for are the flex cable tabs for the LCD screen, which can be pretty easy to break if you're not doing it correctly. Then for lifting the faceplate up, you can either start at the bottom, where I'll like dig a fingernail in and lift it up, or you can take a flathead, stick it in there, twist it a little bit. Then you can either, it does usually take some amount of force, but I forgot to take this screw out. Then you can lift it up from the bottom, or you can come up from the top and just kind of pop it up from here as well. Then lift it up. Usually when I'm lifting it up, I'll just do that, peel it up. Then you'll want to be checking for like dust on the button rubbers and clean that off if necessary. Then at this point, you're going to take off the home start select bar, where I will start at the left side, lift up that a little bit. And once you get that, grab it, then slowly just kind of pry it up along the edge and rotate off. Don't pull too much because you don't want to potentially damage the screen. Then you got to pop up the flex cable tab. So I'll stick in like one edge and then just kind of twist it up, pull. And for the screen, I suggest starting from the top right. So you'll stick the flathead in there, just kind of pry it up a little bit, work it down, and you'll get the right side lifted up, and then I kind of just twist it to the side, and then lift it up. Then I start with this tab, then here I'll kind of like lift up a little bit, kind of rotate aside, pull, set that aside. Then whenever you get down to this part on a PSP 1000, I always suggest removing this screw right here, as well as this screw, and then you can either set them aside or toss them, but do not reinstall them because they can eventually cause damage to the UMD door. There's a lot of PSP 1000 UMD doors that are busted at the left hinge because either proper or improper removal, or just with time, it just busts the hinge, because those screws are only to prevent you from being able to pop off the UMD door without disassembling it. But once you set those 2 screws aside, then you can take the other 5 screws out for the LCD frame. And you want to keep track of like what screws go where, but I've already done thousands of these, so It's not too hard for me to remember. And for the frame, you're gonna pull the open tab, lift up, kind of slide out. You'll have it like that, set it aside somewhere. Now you're pretty much done. You can lift the R button out, lift the R rubber out, then you get to the power switch, twist it off, flick that table or that tab up, peel it off. Then, as you can see on the power switch, we do have a busted area right here. So that's for sure going to fix the problem by just swapping in a new power switch. Power switches, for like a OEM used part on eBay, it would be about like $9, I think. For an OEM charge port, I think it's around $7. You can go generic. Generic would probably be fine for the charge port. Not sure about the power switch, but that would probably also be fine. Then once you're replacing the power or the charge port, you gotta remove the screw here and the screw holding it down. Then you'll lift it up, kind of peel a little bit. Then once you get to this point, you have to slightly lift up the motherboard a little bit because it's kind of set in a bit more. So once you lift it up, then stick your flathead into the gap right here and just kind of stick it in and twist. They'll slowly work it out, then once, pretty easy to get out once you do. Now you gotta put the new one in, just kind of line it up. Push it in, it'll click, sit in place. Then we'll start the reassembly process. Start with the silver screw. At this point, another silver at, hold the port in, and we'll reattach the power switch by putting it in like that, flipping the tab down. You're gonna wanna make sure that you have your antenna still lined up, because if you have the antenna that goes over this piece right here, that will prevent the PCB for the power switch from being able to set down flat on there, and it'll give a bit of a bulge, as well as kind of snake the cables for the charge port around this holding point. Then you want to start at the base of the charge or power switch right here, kind of set down. Then you kind of got to wiggle it like that to pop it in. Then set the flex cable down like that. Then you're going to want to grab the R rubber, kind of wipe it off a little bit, slide it into place like that. R button slides in. Now we're ready to put the frame in. Typically I will take my fingers and just kind of slide them down that to remove any potential dust that might have gotten on it. Then we will have to notch the D-pad into these points right here, because otherwise it will make it so the LCD frame is too raised up and the D-pad is too pushed down, which will make it so the right on the D-pad doesn't really work. So slide it in like that, set down, close the UMD door, should close fine. And you should be able to see that you have the notches right there. Now we will start to screw it back in. You'll use a silver screw at the top left, screw point, another silver screw at the bottom left, and then the 3 remaining points are all the small screws. Right there, right there, and the last one being right here. Then you also want to make sure that the cables for the speaker don't get tucked in there too much. I'm gonna have to lift up the screw a little bit. And now we're ready to put the screen back in. wipe off the cables a little bit, set it in. I start with the backlight cable first, then set the display cable in, lift the tab up. I usually start from the side, push it in, flip the cap down. Then for this cable, for the most part it's already in already, but just kind of grab along the edge and just kind of push in there a little bit. Then just take a finger and flip it down. I start from the left to the right side and just don't apply too much pressure. You want to set it down, kind of set it into the left side first, get it lined up for the top, then just push it in. I'm ready to set the start select bar in. Snake it in there, flip the tab down, set it down starting from the right, pop into the left. Now at this point, you typically wipe off the screen's dust, whatever you can get off. Not always the easiest. I usually use a combination of microfiber and canned air, which will usually do a good enough job. You might have to use a little bit of a cleaner fluid if there's anything extra stuck on there. But should only take maybe 30 seconds or less to get it done. If you get a little bit on there, just kind of blow it off. Then you're gonna wanna, now we'll get to the faceplate. We're gonna be swapping out the rubbers that are all yellowed, or the buttons that are all yellowed. Just switch them over. Then you can de-yellow them with Retro Bright. That was what I mentioned earlier. This one in particular has gunk in there, so I just typically take like microfiber. I like to use the Armor All multi-purpose, but plenty of other things will work perfectly fine. Try to clean it out if you can. Usually I'd use like some Q-tips, which makes it a whole lot easier. But it doesn't have to be fully perfect, because it shouldn't really cause much of an issue. You want to set the buttons in. Then do check the rubber for any dust, kind of wipe it off if you can. Set it in, then we'll switch over to the D-pad. Which all looks good. The tab's a bit busted, but that's not too much of an issue. I'll wipe off a little bit more of the dust that got on this. Then for dealing with the dust on the faceplate, it's always just good to have good lighting wherever seems the best. Then once you have the faceplate on, you kind of hold it up to the light and see how it looks for the dust. If it all looks good, you can start putting the rest of the screws in. Then the slider still is sticky. So this specific version, you can kind of just pop it off. Right, see a bit of gunk on there. And you can either like clean or replace this. If you don't have the parts available, I'd suggest just kind of cleaning it off, but I'm pretty sure I have a replacement part for it. So that's just what I'm going to do in this case. Then you can just pop it back in. And it seems to be not sticking now. Check for dust every single time you take the faceplate off. Looks good, so you can put the screws back in. I typically would suggest checking that the parts that you installed fix the issue, but in this case I know they're going to fix the issue. But overall that should be pretty much done for this repair. And when you are setting the faceplate on, always check that before you fully screw it down, check that the R button and the L button are pressing to make sure that they were set correctly. And bolt the small screws in. I'll put the side trim screw in. Put in the battery. Check that it's charging. Power it up.